Hello, everyone. How are you? Hope you're doing well. My name's Carl. Welcome to this webinar on behalf of the TEFL Org. We are a teacher training company. We help people to live the dream of being a TEFL teacher around the world, which I have been lucky enough to do in quite a few places. And today we're sort of carrying on the theme of teaching around the world by doing a webinar about teaching as a backpacker. I'm going to be talking a bit about sort of what to expect if you want to try and be a TEFL teacher whilst traveling a bit of the world. And this is a live Q&A. So please, any questions you have at all about being a TEFL teacher, please do put them in the chat. And please let us know where you are. As I said, my name's Carl. I'm a TEFL teacher trainer. I'm a TEFL examiner. I'm an online teacher, sometimes a face-to-face teacher, although not so much these days of that. I've been lucky enough to have lived in many places around the world. I've taught English in Japan, in China, in Vietnam, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Iraq, Sri Lanka, whilst also traveling to lots of other places as well, but not actually teaching. And I used to work quite a bit as well in Spain and Italy just before COVID hit, before the world went online a bit more. So please let us know where you are. Hi, Vinny in St. Louis, Missouri. Fiona's in Cork. Oh, Fiona, I love Cork. Great place. Natalie's in England. Hi. James in Canada. Tom's in Manchester. Lauren's in Ontario. Dylan's in Essex. John is in Philadelphia. I can't keep up with everybody. Please do say hello, though. And let us know where you are in the world. It's always quite interesting to know this sort of thing. So, right, basically, I'm going to do a presentation where I'm going to talk a bit about my ideas as teaching as a backpacker. If I don't cover the subjects that you want, please do get your question in. As I said, this is live, and the earlier you get your question in, the more likely we will be to answer it, because sometimes we do run out of time and don't get to answer all the questions. So I can see Natalie's already got her question in. Natalie, I'm going to answer that one as soon as I finished my little presentation. Right, okay. So first of all, I'm going to sort of talk about what I am assuming a backpacker is. So basically, I'm going to be talking for the next sort of 20 minutes or so about a backpacker, as in somebody that wants to stay in a country for a short period of time. So I'm not really going to be talking about people that want to go and live in a country maybe for a year or maybe for 2 years. I've done webinars where I've covered that sort of thing before. Here I'm talking about people that are sort of wanting to travel the world and maybe not spend that long in one country. And hopefully that's what you think a backpacker is. If you are, I mean, sort of, I could sort of be seen as a backpacker teacher because I moved to Vietnam, and then before coming home, I moved to Japan. Then before coming home, I moved to Sri Lanka, and I taught in these places. But really, I stayed in some of those countries for sort of up to 2 years. So I'm not really assuming that as a backpacker. And for today, it's going to be about short periods of time. So first of all, why work as a backpacker? So the first reason is, I mean, before I was a teacher, I was a backpacker, and I went to quite a few countries traveling around. And this is before I'd even heard of the word TEFL, and sort of when I was about 19, 20. And I had some jobs that I didn't really enjoy as I went around just to pay the bills. So now, nothing to say against them, they just weren't for me. So I had jobs where I was cleaning kitchens. I had jobs where I was picking fruit on farms. I had jobs where I was washing cars, this kind of thing. Didn't pay that well, and I didn't really enjoy it myself personally. However, if I had known at that age, 20 odd years ago, that there was such a thing as TEFL, I would have thought that actually teaching, if as a TEFL, as a backpacking job, would pay more than most professions. And I think that's probably true now. I think, you know, generally, if you're going to go around the world, tends to be that teaching pays pretty well. You know, you're not going to be a millionaire, but it definitely sort of pays around the average rate of pay that most people earn in a year in a country. So I think that actually it can be a pretty good way to make a bit of money as you're traveling around as a backpacker. So it's a great way to supplement your travels if you arrive somewhere and you do need a bit of money. If you've got your TEFL certificate, and if you can feel like you can apply for jobs and get jobs, it can be a good way to supplement the money that you need to get yourself around the world. Okay, so it can be that. And I do know people that do this for sure. It's also a great way, I think, to meet locals. So some of the best friends that I've met around the world have been my students, or have been some of the colleagues that I've worked with that are local. I've got good friends from other countries who are actually other teaching colleagues, but not from an English speaking country. They were teachers from the home country that I was in. They became good friends. They used to take me out. They used to show me around, that kind of thing. It's a great way to meet locals and a great way to meet the country as a backpacker. Whereas, not necessarily, but sometimes, but not necessarily if you go and work in kitchens or something like that, are they maybe going to have that reporter do it. That's what I found. Also, I think teaching is fun. You can't really go wrong with a nice classroom full of kids where you're playing lots of games and that kind of thing. I think it's really good fun. So it's a good job to do as a backpacker, right? Now, but what do you need to consider? And this is where teaching as a backpacker becomes a bit more difficult than just teaching normally, where you might apply for a job that you see abroad before you get there, and they pay for your visa and they pay for your flight maybe, and things like that. The backpacking way of doing things is a bit different. And the first situation you're going to be sort of thinking about is about working legally. So when you normally get a job as a TEFL teacher, and all the jobs that I've ever done in the TEFL world, I was in a country and I decided I wanted to move to another country. So for example, I was in the UK, I decided I wanted to move to Vietnam. I saw the job advertised online and I applied for it. They then sorted out my visa before I got to that country. I had all my interviews and that sort of thing. They paid for my flights, flew me out there. I stayed there for a year, 2 years. I worked completely legally. Now, as a backpacker, yes, you could do that. You could say, right, I'm going to go to a country, but you'd have to then really fulfill the work visa situation, which means staying there for a year, probably. They will expect you to have a big interview in that takes a big amount of planning. But as a backpacker, what you probably want to do is arrive in a country, see a bit of the country, and then think, right, do you know what? My funds are getting a bit low. I now need to work. But you're there on a tourist visa. You're not there on a working visa, which some people are who might have applied from their own country or a different country to get there, if that makes sense. Please tell me if it didn't. So that's the first thing you've got to work out, is what is the legal situation of you working in the country you've arrived in on a tourist visa and you think you want to work in. Now, each country is slightly different in terms of their working visas. You might be able to change your tourist visa to a working visa when you're there. Perfectly possible to do in a lot of countries. Some countries, however, they make you leave that country. You have to then go to an embassy of that country. Let's say Cambodia. You've arrived in Cambodia. You decide you want to teach. I don't know if this is rule for Cambodia. I'm just using it as an example. But Cambodia then say, right, in order to change from a tourist to a work visa, you have to go to our embassy in Thailand, change it there, then come back in. That's what some countries do. So you have to work it out what the situation is. And however, what some people do is work on a tourist visa. I know a guy who, in the 2 years I was in Vietnam, he constantly worked in Vietnam on a tourist visa. Now, what the rules for Vietnam at that time was you can't legally work on a tourist visa. But he went up to a language school, said, I'm here, I've got a TEFL certificate. Have you got any work? They said yes. They took him on as an illegal worker, but he seemed happy with that. But his tourist visa would run out. He didn't want to be out of his tourist visa time, because that can be, quite difficult if you want to get anything stamped, bank accounts, anything like that. So what he would do is he would then leave Vietnam, take a bus to Thailand or something like that. Then he would then re-enter Vietnam on another tourist visa and then just go with the job again. So you've got to really know the country you're in, what the situation is. Okay, if that makes sense. Now, some schools will want you to work for a term. I don't think I've sort of ever really known a school that I've worked for to take people on for 1 or 2 weeks. They usually want a teacher to teach for at least a term, or till the end of a term if it's midway through a term. TEFL isn't really the sort of thing where you can turn up and sort of say, right, do you know what? Hi, have you got any jobs for like Tuesday afternoon? It's not really that sort of company, because not really that sort of field, sorry, because they want you to be committed to the students. They want you to be able to work. Okay. So that's something to bear in mind. If you do, let's say, arrive in Vietnam, you then want to work on a tourist visa, you go to a language school, you say, look, I'm here. They will probably turn around to you and say, right, well, you've got to work for the next 10 weeks or whatever it might be. Okay. Another thing you need to consider is that if you go in on as a backpacker, if you're in there on like a tourist visa, you're not there on a working visa, or you just say you want to stay there for a term, and maybe you've got a working visa, but you only want to stay there for a term, the company that employs you is probably less likely to give you sort of perks than they are to the other members of staff. So for example, some companies, they pay for your accommodation. I don't believe that a school that you go in and say, do you know, I'm only here for the next 5 or 6 weeks, I don't believe that they are as likely to give you accommodation as they are someone who says, I'm going to be here for the next year. All right. Little things like health insurance, they might not give you. Again, these are sort of things that you can ask the school whether they will help you out with. But generally, that's not something that happens. Okay. So something to be aware of, that you as a backpacker might be in a school, you might have a less competitive wage package compared to other people that have committed for a year or 2 years. Okay. Right now, but the other option that you might want to think about if you're going to go backpacking is you arrive in, let's go with, you arrive in Brazil. Quite difficult sometimes to get jobs and work in Brazil. Quite difficult to get work visas sometimes in Brazil, but you need a bit of money to get yourself from Rio de Janeiro to Sao Paulo. What you might actually think about doing is just trying to recruit private students yourself in Rio or Sao Paulo, wherever it might be. So I'm going to talk a bit about that. But so this, again, you'd be on a tourist visa, and you've got to work out legally what the situation is there. I do not recommend that you break visa rules. TEFL Org do not recommend that you break visa rules. That's entirely up to you. But I do know that it happens out there. Just something to think about. Okay. Right. So what do you need to backpack? So a TEFL certificate is the first thing. Many years ago, and I'm sort of talking before I became a teacher 20 years ago, some schools were quite happy to just have somebody who knew English to a high level to teach. Nowadays, that's not really the case. Nowadays, all schools, even ones that are sort of taking you on illegally on a tourist visa, will expect you to have a TEFL certificate. So that is a course like one of ours. Go to our website, tefl.org. You do your TEFL certificate. You get that. You've got your 120-hour certificate. A school, no matter what, will want that to happen. Okay, to have that. The other thing to think about if you are backpacking around the world is that you will need some smart clothes. A lot of countries around the world expect their teachers to look smart, girls or boys. So they might not like it if you have tattoos. They might not like it if you have long hair that sort of comes all over. Not a problem I have. They'll want you to have it back in a ponytail. They will expect the men to wear a shirt, trousers, that kind of thing. So something to be aware of. Now, you might not want to carry these around in your backpack, but if you're going to get a job, you probably will need to buy some in the country that you go to. Me being a big bloke, if I try and buy some smart clothes in Vietnam, Thailand, or Japan, less such a problem in Japan, but still a bit of a problem in Japan. I have trouble, so I always have smart clothes with me. They will expect you to have your documents on you. So I'm talking about your certificates, that kind of thing. I'm going to talk about degrees in a minute, but if you do have a degree, they will probably expect that to happen. They don't really like copies. So something to be aware of, if you're happily got your rucksack and you're throwing yourself around Southeast Asia, that kind of thing, you probably will need to have your documents. They won't A good school generally won't take on people with photocopies of certificates. The other thing that you've got to be aware of is, and this is something that I've had issues with before when I've been recruiting or managing schools, is you do need to have a pretty good attitude for this. So what I mean by that is you've got to be positive. You've got to be, you're probably going to get a lot of knockbacks if you're trying to be a TEFL teacher backpacker, because some schools just won't have jobs for you. Take it on the chin. Just realize that you're not necessarily going to get work straight away. It's going to take a bit longer than maybe if you just did the normal work visa route. Okay. And you'll need to have some sort of commitment to the group that you're the teaching, basically. Here, I mean class, basically. So, they will expect you to do mark homework. They will expect you to plan your lessons well, that kind of thing. It's like if you do get a job where you're taken on a tourist visa or for a short period of time on a work visa, they do still expect you to have good commitment. Just because you're a backpacker doesn't mean that you can get away with it. All right. But hopefully everybody watching this has a commitment to their class. If not, why would you want to be a teacher? So let's talk about legality of work. So research is really, really important here. If I was going to go to a country, I would want to know what the work visa situation is there, what the tourist visa situation is there. I would also really, if you are then going to go down the route of working on a tourist visa, I would really, really expect you to know what will happen if something goes wrong. Okay. So if you get caught working on a tourist visa, are you going to just get a fine? Are you just going to be sent home? Are you going to be put in prison? Those sort of things are worth knowing about. Okay. So research is really, really important here. What are the visa rules? So as a tourist, are you allowed to work? Might be possible. As a tourist, how long are you allowed to stay in the country before you have to leave? If you want to renew your visa, what do you have to do to renew the visa? Find all that out. There's loads and loads of websites that will tell you this sort of thing. You can definitely sort of find that sort of thing out. So there are such a thing called a working holiday visa. I did this myself in Australia many, many years ago. So what that basically means is you're sort of seen as a backpacker working abroad. So it's a lot cheaper usually than a normal work visa. You also don't tend to need to tie it to a company. So when I worked in Vietnam, the university I worked for, my work visa was tied to them. I could only work for that company. Whereas a working holiday visa, you're free to come and go in jobs. You tend to be a time limit, how long you can work for one, that kind of thing. But there's a lot more freedom. That might be sort of the thing that you're looking for. And some of the countries that have working holiday visas are Japan, Argentina, France, Germany, Australia. Now, you need to check your eligibility. Not every country in the world is able to get the working holiday visa for Japan. You've got to work it out. You've got to go on the Japanese website, the Japanese immigration website, and see if your country makes it eligible to work there. Same with Argentina, France, Germany, Australia. Okay, so just something that you want to have a think about. Yeah. Okay. What do you need to get a working visa? So what documents? If you do decide to go down, and you want to get a work visa, but you're only going to go work for a few weeks or a couple of months. What documents do you need? Do you need to go for a doctor's test? So China, for example, makes some people, depending on where they've traveled to before, go for a test, a chest x-ray, that kind of thing. Do you need to have a HIV test? All that kind of thing. What do you need to get in order to get a working visa? Because that's something that you've got to work out. And then if you do work illegally, what will happen? And again, as I'm saying, we're not saying it's a good thing to work illegally. We're not saying you should work illegally, but you really do need to know if you're working on a tourist visa, what will happen. Okay. And lots of people do it. They do. Right. How to get a job. So you won't see many short-term contracts advertised. Now, by short term, I'm sort of thinking of less than a term. So sort of less than 10 weeks. The difference where you do see short-term contracts advertised are in summer schools, especially in Europe. You see lots of jobs advertised for summer schools then. So then they could sort of be short-term contract advertised. But you don't, if I'm in the UK and I want to go work in Japan or I want to go work in China, then you won't see many short-term contracts advertised. They'll all be sort of for a year or 2 years. Okay. The other thing as well, if you do want to go and work somewhere for, let's say, a term, the schools will want you to be there. I really don't think schools in Spain, if you're eligible to work in the EU, if you're like, I'm thinking of coming to Spain, do you have any 8-week term, any 8-week jobs or 10-week jobs? Because you're not there, the school probably won't put the time into you for someone that's only going to be there a short period of time. However, if you're in Spain and you're knocking on language school doors and you're saying, yes, I'm here right now, I can come and teach you for the next 10 weeks, I think they would be a lot more willing to put the time into you. So what I would do would be to Google language schools. So I'm in Spain, I'm then going to Italy. I would get on, and I'm going to land in Rome. I want to work in Rome. I would get on Google language schools Rome, and I would see where they are. I would look at maybe some reviews, that kind of thing. You know, I'll sort of see ones that look like they work for me. And then I will go and I will send emails. I will phone them. I will knock on the doors of these language schools and say, hi, look, I'm here right now. Is there any chance you have got any work for the next 8 to 10 weeks? Something like that. You never know. They don't have anything, go to the next school. Go to the next school. They might have had a teacher that's just left. They might have a teacher that's off sick. They might have had a lot more students that have just arrived than they thought they would, and they need a teacher for short term. You never know, but that's what I would do. And when I do that, I would be very professional. I would be very smart. Okay. So, you know, I would be expected to sort of have a mini interview there and then, you know. If I was a non-native speaker, I'd be expected to sort of show my English level there. And I would definitely turn up in relatively smart clothes as opposed to turning up in an England football shirt or something like that. Okay. I would take my CVs, I would take my documents, and I would do that. And I know people that do this, and I know people that get work this way on tourist visas. Okay. The other thing to think about is to find local students, as I spoke to before. So you arrive in Rome and you don't really, you know, you've knocked on a few schools and you've not had much luck. Or you think, do you know what? I actually don't really want to work for a school. I want to try and find my own students. That's definitely something that people can do. Obviously, you know, private students will hopefully give you a bit of cash. You know, they'll help you out with that. You know, the tax situation, you've got to work that out, the legality of it. So how I have gone about doing that sort of thing would be to look for language exchange groups on social media. They're usually a great starting point. So, you know, you're in Madrid, there will be bars, there will be pubs, and they will have Facebook groups about language exchanges, or they have like places where they meet to do language exchanges. So you give someone an hour of English, they give you an hour of Spanish, that kind of thing. I would be on that in social media, and I'd be saying, look, hi, because you'll see people wanting to learn English on there. And I'll be saying, hi, I'm here in Rome. I'm a qualified TEFL teacher. I have experience of teaching Trinity College English test. Please message me if you feel like that can help. That kind of thing. I would be doing that. I'd be putting posters up in universities. Tends to be a good place. People at university like to learn English. Some of them have to do it for their courses. Universities, I'd be putting them up in sort of student bars, that kind of thing, if the pub allows you to. You know, sometimes pubs have a notice board. Same with cafes. I'd be putting that up as like, hi, I'm Carl, I'm here in Rome. I'd put it, you know, make a poster up that looks good, and I'd put it up and I would see if that gets me any students. You never know. I would maybe have a website where I've made that before I go backpacking, and I show myself as how good a teacher I am. It could be a quite simple website. We've done webinars about how to make a website. You know, you don't need to do all the booking stuff or anything like that. Just a web address that you can put on the posters or leaflets, that kind of thing. I would get involved on social media for the group. So, you know, Spain, learn English, Spanish people learning English. I'm sure there's groups like that kind of thing. I'd be on there and I'd be saying, oh, hi, I'm here in Madrid. Does anybody need lessons? I'd be doing all that sort of thing. Be prepared for some work. Okay, so you know, the only problem with finding your own students, local students like this is they might come to you and say, do you know what? I really need to improve my listening. You have then got to plan a lesson around listening. Whereas if you go and work for a school, they've probably already got materials and that kind of thing. And, you know, how are you going to, if you might have some materials yourself, some textbooks, you know, are you going to want to cart them around as a backpacker, or if you've got a digital way of storing them, can you buy the digital version? That kind of thing. You know, be prepared for it, or can you make, or are you just, have you got your laptop on you? You know, are you going to make your own lessons, that kind of thing? Just be prepared for the bit of work, the extra work that's involved with finding local students. Okay, right. Know your worth as a backpacker teacher. Now, what I mean by this is know sort of how much money you can realistically earn as a backpacker, right? So backpackers don't tend to have the best of reputations. So if you're and this is unfortunate because, you know, we all know that backpackers is a really wide range of different types of, you know, people. So what I'm saying by that is backpackers don't have the best reputation. So don't play to that stereotype, you know. Don't just sort of go in all relaxed, you know, go in and look keen, go and look happy, that kind of thing, you know, disprove that you're not going to do a good job. Basically, you're just there to spend the time on the beaches in Thailand, when actually, do you know what, for that term, you're going to get involved in the class and you're going to help them. As I said, you might not be paid as much as permanent workers. You might not be paid as much as people who are on longer term contracts, that kind of thing. It's just part of the deal of, unfortunately, working as a backpacker. Yeah. You might not have as many legal rights. That's something as well to think about. You know, some countries around the world have fantastic legal rights for their workers. As a backpacker, you know exactly what's going to happen. You know, if someone doesn't pay you, who are you going to go complain to? You might not have anyone that you'll be able to legally complain to, because then you don't want them to know that you were working as a backpacker, right? Get it very clear from the company when or how you will be paid. So, you know, get them to saying clearly, are they going to pay you in cash on this date? You know, if they keep putting that back, big red flag. Don't give them too much of your time, that kind of thing, right? And also, I think as a backpacker, I think for anybody that goes and teaches abroad, I always say have a backup plan. What are you going to do if your mum falls ill, or your dad falls ill, or your nan dies? You know, how are you going to get back? Have a backup plan in case things go wrong. Yeah. Just make sure that you know what is going to happen if things go wrong. Okay. Right. Thank you. Now, look, I hope that I've answered your questions. If I have not covered the part of teaching as a backpacker that you wanted to know about, please do put it in the chat, please. Okay. Because this is a live Q&A and I love answering questions. Hi, Natalie. How does it work if you teach in a different country but online? Do you just stay on tourist visa? Do you still pay your home taxes and stuff? Right. This is an interesting one. So there, Natalie, I think, right. So correct me if I'm wrong, Natalie, but say you are teaching Chinese students and you got that job in the UK. So you started for example, you started teaching Chinese students when you were in the UK. You then think, do you know what? I'm going to go do this on a beach in Thailand. So you go abroad and you're still teaching the Chinese students, but you're living in Thailand. Yeah. Right. So what that is a digital nomad. That's a bit different from backpacking. And I've done webinars about working as a digital nomad. So that might be something that if you're interested in this, Natalie, that's something you can do. Right. Now, do you stay on a tourist visa? Again, now this is new situations to the world. And probably the visa situation in certain countries hasn't caught up with this kind of example. So you do have to work it out what the legal implications are. Now, if you go and work in Thailand, you've got to, for example, and you're teaching Chinese students, but they're paying you into your UK bank account, you will probably still have to pay taxes either if it's taxed at source in China, or then fine. If it's not taxed at source in China, then you have to pay your taxes in the UK. You'd have to speak to an accountant. You'd have to get legal advice about that, Natalie, because I am not an accountant. I don't know what that is. Me, myself, when I have my students abroad, they pay me for a bank transfer. These are students that I found myself, not working for a company. I then declare that to the UK authorities and I pay taxes on that. But Natalie, you need to work that out. But basically there, what you're talking about is being a digital nomad. And there are countries out there which allow digital nomad visas. Might be something to work out, to think about, okay? Monica, hi. Where can you teach as a non-native teacher? Now, Monica, I don't know if you're talking about as a backpacker or if you're talking about generally. Again, I have done webinars where I talk for an hour. I've done them a few actually about this topic, where I just talk about this topic. So, Monica, I can't tell you in the next couple of minutes enough time. I do recommend on Facebook, you look for our videos or go on YouTube, go to TEFL Org channel on YouTube and look for the video I did about non-native teachers, okay? Right, now, the crux of it is, Monica, there are countries out there that only allow people in on work visas depending on the passport they've got. But there are other countries that don't care about what country passport the worker has. So you've got to think that. The other thing you've got to think about, Monica, is that there are different... What is a native speaker? If your English is at a high level, like C1 or C2 on the Common European Framework of Reference, you are classed as a native speaker in your speaking ability, or a native-like speaker. Companies will take people on like that, but the difference is that it depends on what passport you've had. So, Monica, I don't know what passport you have. What you need to do is watch my webinar about non-native speakers and the best places to go. Okay. Dawn, what is shortest duration of contracts offered to teachers for teaching English? Yeah, 6 to 12 months. 6 is quite rare. 12 tend to be, some companies want you to stay for 2 years. I've even had companies that will only take me on if I promise to stay for 5 or 6 years. So 12 months tends to be the shortest time. So if you do want a short-term contract, you can look at summer schools in Europe, summer schools in the UK or Ireland, or the other option is you just turn up somewhere, Dawn, and say, hi, my name's Dawn. I'm TEFL qualified. I'm knocking on your door. Have you got any work for the next 10 weeks or something like that? Yeah, that might be worth doing, like what I've just been saying for the last sort of 20 minutes, really. Dawn. Good luck. David or David, hi. What are the opportunities for seniors? There's loads of opportunities for seniors. I don't know what do you class as a senior? David, is my first question. Now, there are countries out there that have legal upper limits on who can get work visas. So that tends to be around 60 to 65 years. But there are also countries out there that don't have such things. I've done webinars where I talk about this for people that are of a more mature age than others. There are definitely opportunities out there, but you've got to sort of know where it's going. The Middle East tends to be quite good for that. Europe, if you've got a European Union passport, is a great place for people who are senior. Okay, good luck, David. Right, Millie, this is a good question, and it is something that I should have said, and I thought I did, but perhaps I didn't in my PowerPoint. It was when I was writing it was something I wanted to say. Backpacking as a teacher without a degree is one of the better ways for people to get a bit of work. Now, so for example, Japan has a working holiday visa. That's a way of getting into Japan working without a degree, whereas a lot of companies will apply, when you apply for your work visa for Japan, they expect you to have a degree. So that's something that's worth looking at. Now, the reason why backpacking can be better than normal working visa situation is because a school, if they're willing to take you on when you're on a tourist visa, they probably have a slightly more, well, they're not bound by as many regulations because they're not keeping to the regulations themselves, right? So if you don't have a degree and you arrive somewhere like Thailand, and then you do sort of think, okay, there's a language school. I'm going to knock on that door, see if they've got any work for me. You know, they might take you on more likely without a degree if you're on a tourist visa, because they haven't got to go through all the paperwork of doing the working visa and making sure that the worker's got a degree and all that kind of thing. All right. If that makes sense to me. The other thing to think about is that when you're trying to get your own students, the students don't tend to care what qualifications you have. They should, especially for sort of if business English, I think, and that kind of thing. Myself, you know, they want the teacher that's got a bit of training, has done an extra module in business English, that kind of thing. Myself, degrees, you know, not quite as important for a good teacher. That's what I think. But that if getting your own students might be a way of getting a bit of work as a backpacker, really, if you don't have a degree. Yeah. Good luck. Iman, hi. What a lovely name you got. Can I find a part-time job in Vietnam while I'm there backpacking? So the answer is yes. Now, a part-time job. So by part-time, do you mean you're sort of only going to be working 10 hours a week, something like that? You know, a lot of schools do want people to work full-time, but also some schools actually don't. They're quite happy to take on people part-time. So yeah, that's there. There are lots and lots of language schools in Vietnam. I would definitely be knocking on some doors if that's the sort of thing you want. I'm pretty sure you'll get positive answers. You might even get people. You might even get companies in Vietnam that want to flip you onto a work visa. You never know. Okay. Caitlin. Right. So the right to work is basically what I've gone through. Every country is slightly different in the way that they have their visa situation. So it depends where you want to go in the world. If you're there on a tourist visa, you got to work out what the legality is. Yeah. You might not have a right to work. Then it's up to you what you then do with that, Caitlin. Okay, you know, but you've got to be aware that schools might or might not take you on because of this. Yeah. Mark, good luck. Question. Answer. Is it realistic for a newly qualified online TEFL teacher to generate $1,000 a month within the first few months of teaching? Right. I don't think it's unrealistic. £1,000 a month. That's only sort of £250 a week, isn't it? So let's say you get a job that's towards the lower end of what you might be willing to accept, £15 an hour, say, or let's say even £12.50, £13 an hour. Let me get my calculator out. So you want to earn £250 a week, £30 an hour. So that means you got to do about 20 hours a week. That's definitely realistic, I think. Yeah. Within the first few months. Yeah. I mean, it depends on you, Mark. Like, first of all, you've got to get your applications in correct. You've got to be able to get through the interviews, that kind of thing. I've done webinars about interviews and about applications. Might be worth looking, you know, because obviously once you've got your TEFL qualification, you then need to apply for jobs. Maybe it takes a few weeks for the jobs to come through, Mark. That's everything I would say. But then if you're there, if the students like you, if the companies like you, they'll probably ramp up your hours. You can definitely do that. Now, to generate £1,000 a month getting your own students, I see there's lots of people online on LinkedIn and on YouTube that say, yes, join my course and you can have a full teaching schedule within 1 month. I think that's a bit unrealistic to earn £1,000 a month like that myself, but people out there I'm sure have done. Yeah. So just something to bear in mind. But yeah, I think that's possible with hard work. Yeah. Helen, what is the best way to find teaching work after gaining a TEFL qualification? So, well, it depends. What sort of work are you talking about? Online? Are you talking about face-to-face? Do you want to go abroad? Do you want to go in your own country? The best way is you've got your TEFL qualification. The best way is to get your application really, really well done. So, you know, make it really tight application. Make sure you know what you're going to put in your cover letter. Make sure you know you've prepared for the interviews, that kind of thing. Because a lot of people do, unfortunately, think that once they've got their TEFL certificate, the jobs will just come to them. That's not true. You know, you do have to put a bit of work in, you know, Helen. Again, I've done webinars about this, but it's possible. I know plenty of people who I have trained up that have been abroad within a month after doing my qualification with me. Okay. Summer schools, yeah, Angelica, I have mentioned that. So summer schools in the UK, in Europe and in Ireland tend to be pretty good ways to get a bit of short-term work. But most summer schools are quite strict on taking people on with the right to work because they are bound by, they're sort of linked to government organizations. So that's just something you've got to be aware of. Yeah. Alex, are adult language schools more flexible? Well, they might. No, I don't think they are, because most language schools in the world don't just teach adults. Most language schools in the world teach kids and adults. There are a few exceptions, but most, because you make more money teaching kids, basically. Language schools, the language schools make more money. You as a teacher probably don't, but the language schools make more money teaching kids. So I don't really think that they're more flexible, to be honest with you. David, is a CELTA from almost 2 decades ago? So, well, I hope so, because my CELTA was from almost 2 decades ago. Yeah, a CELTA doesn't expire, I don't think, you know. What you might want to do though, David, is get your CV nice and tight if you haven't taught in the last 2 decades. You know, maybe do something like a practical online weekend course with someone like us, just to get your toe back into it and be able to put stuff on your CV, that kind of thing. Tanya, do you need to legalize your documents before you travel? No. So, for example, when I arrived in Azerbaijan, they wanted to legalize my documents. So I gave them my degree certificate and it came back with this horrible stamp on it. Still makes me sad when I look at my degree certificate that they ruined my lovely degree certificate. You don't, right. So if you're going to go abroad and work on a working visa, they might get you to legalize the documents before you leave, or they do it when you arrive. If you're going to be going as a backpacker, working on tourist visas, that kind of thing, then no, you don't need to do it. When you apply for jobs, when you get given a job, that's one of the questions they'll ask you. Okay. Amber, what countries are more acceptable of tattoos on teachers? So I think Europe tends to be quite relaxed about this. Right. Where a lot of countries around the world are still quite sort of small c conservative, you know, they sort of have quite religious reasons, you know, and that kind of thing. And you know, like in Japan, it would definitely be a bit of a no-no with any sort of online, any sort of tattoos being shown, for example. Again, you've got to sort of think, but I think probably Europe is the best bet if you do have lots and lots of tattoos. Okay. And if you see jobs where they advertise, when they say you need to send in a photo, that's one of the things they're checking. Kieran, can I teach online TEFL teaching? Yes, you can teach online TEFL teaching with us. Yes, for sure. If that's something you want to do, yeah, for sure. I'm not really sure what your question is there, Kieran. Good luck. Angelica, do I know about Korea? Yes, lovely food. Has its own pop scene. South Korea is nice. North Korea is a bit mad. What's your question? Now, teaching in Korea is a great thing. There's loads of different ways of getting into Korea. You know, they have government organizations where you can go and work for governments in like different schools. There are universities that are advertising before. It's one of the best places to go, I think, as a TEFL teacher. You see lots of jobs advertised. Somewhere like eslcafe.com usually has lots and lots of jobs advertised for career. Great place to go. I think did we do a webinar about Alan's monitor in the chat? I should have said hello to Alan earlier. I think we did a webinar just about career, didn't we? Yeah. Helen, what is the best way to find online work? Well, the best way is to get your TEFL certificate, get your, you know, then don't apply to lots of jobs at once, right? If you want to go work for a company, the best thing I always say is you apply for one that you like the look of, see how that goes, see if they're going to give you a job. Because if they don't give you the job, there might be a problem with your application. So then check your application, check your interview skills, and then apply for another one. I always say with online work, don't expect to get loads of work straight away. It does take, a few weeks for them to get to know you in a school to give you more hours. Yeah. But the best way to find online work is to go work for a company. So if you go on our website, TEFL.org, at the top, there's a jobs bit. Click on that. You'll see jobs advertised. Okay. Okay. Again, I've done webinars about this, Helen. David, hi. As a native English speaker, is it worth doing it? So it doesn't make any difference whether you're a native English speaker, because if you're a native English speaker, you might be a terrible teacher. If just because you're a native English speaker does not mean that you're going to be a good TEFL teacher. A good TEFL teacher is a good TEFL teacher. Right. Is it worth doing the level 5 or the 100? Right. So for most jobs, 120-hour TEFL certificate would be fine. I think especially for people who have degrees, who can sort of just bump up their qualifications a bit. I always say the level 5, like, it's not the equivalent to a degree. It's not going to get you into countries where they say you've got to have a degree to get a work visa. But if you're going for a job where you've got 120 hour and someone else got 120 hour, you don't need a degree for the work purposes. It's just someone has a degree, someone doesn't. If you don't have a degree, then the level 5 is a good boost there. That's what I always say, David. Okay. Thomas, hi. What would be my advice to new teachers in terms of first term nerves? Right. Nerves come along the time. I get nervous before I do new classes now. I just meeting new people sometimes makes me a bit nervous. I think that's perfectly acceptable. Preparation is your first thing, Thomas. If you've prepared your class well, if you know exactly what you're going to do in that first hour in the class and you know exactly how it's going to go, then you can do it. If you're teaching kids, always start a bit more strictly. Don't start relaxed and then try and become strict. That's more difficult. Start strict and then become relaxed. Imposter syndrome. If you've got your qualification, Thomas, you're a good TEFL teacher. No need to feel like you're an imposter. Hi, Amanj. You're going to Xi'an. Well, it's one of my favorite cities in China. It's a really good place. What advice do I have for you? Well, enjoy it. First of all, Xi'an's a great place. There's loads of cool stuff to see in Xi'an, Chinese old buildings and that kind of thing. What advice do I have for you? Just enjoy it, mate. To be honest with you, just the students are going to be shy. The students are going to be quiet. That's Chinese students. Don't expect too much of them. First of all, be friendly, be nice, get them speaking, learn their names. You will be absolutely fine. Enjoy that one. I wish I was going to Xi'an. Are there many online TEFL teaching opportunities, Kieran? Yes, there are, for sure. Even after COVID, they're still on there, There will definitely be job opportunities there. Look on all the websites. TEFL.org, our website, Job Center. TEFL.com, online jobs on there. ESLcafe.com. Jobs in there, you'll see them. Okay. Good question, David. So what I would do is I would have a bit of English on there and I would have a bit of the local language as well. Yeah, for sure. Get someone to translate it for you or use Google Translate. Okay. But, make it flashy, make it look good. You'll definitely, you find, I know people that find students within their own city, let alone backpacking like that. Yeah, volunteering is an option, Thomas, but you don't tend to make much money. Marsha, if you want to look at our old webinars, they're all on our Facebook page, they're all on our YouTube page. We don't hide them away. We do not have a password or anything like that. I'm sorry if I didn't get to your question, but I did say get them in early. Thank you very much, everybody. We really appreciate you watching this webinar. If you have a burning question, please do send it to us through Facebook, through our website, tefl.org. We've got a Facebook group as well. That's a really good place. I monitor that and I tend to answer questions quite quickly and that kind of thing. I hope you enjoyed this webinar. Please do like us and all that sort of thing, because we are quite vain. Well, I am, and I do like to be liked. If you didn't like it, please do say in the chat why you didn't like it, because as well, that also gives us information. Thank you, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a good day. Bye-bye.